Alright, so we're back once again, and today, and, well, keeping with tradition, as I've done a video on random battles and a video on ranked battles, I thought the next logical step would be to do a video on the newest type of battles introduced into World of Warships. And it's none other than the 1v1 Brawls. Now, usually I would be using footage that I gathered from 1v1 Brawls, but due to the fact that I had the idea for this video after they've already ended, and the fact that the new update means that I can't use any old replay files, well then, enjoy the ranked game instead. Now, of course, this isn't the first time 1v1 Brawls have been introduced into the game. They were in the game a while back, and generally it was pretty well received. So, breaking from tradition of what I usually do, which is talking badly about some of the things or players in the game known as World of Warships, instead we're going to discuss some of the games and ship picks I've been seeing in pursuit of actually finally maybe 1v1ing someone who isn't AFK or a bot and actually winning. So in that vein, let's get into it. And if you want to watch some of these games live, I stream a lot of my World of Warships games at twitch.tv/thedarkcalling. Alright, enough shameless plugging, let's get into it. So we're going to go through this in terms of ship classes. I don't know why, we just are. So with all good trash talk, I'm going to start with myself. If you haven't been noticing based on the content I produce, all I tend to play are DDs, and I play them a hell of a lot. And so, like any normal person and following my own advice, I took the class that I play the best into any given game mode, and in this instance Brawls, and expected to go well. Well, that's not exactly what happened. In my infinite wisdom, I thought it would be a great idea to take the Lightning into a 1v1. You know, it's a really strong tier 8 DD, with loads of things you can do in a 1v1, with single file torps being one of the many advantages amongst others. I was wrong. You see, the mistake I made is that I didn't really take into account the enemy player taking a ship like the Massachusetts or the Tirpitz and steamrolling through the middle of the map / caps. And so what would any self-respecting DD player do when faced with the very real prospect of getting absolutely blasted by a battleship? That's right, do YOLO, and hope to God that the enemy both doesn't have HE loaded, which is unlikely based on the fact that there's only 2 ships in the entire game, one of them being a DD, or their aim is as good as those guys that aim to shut down Chernobyl before it exploded. And even if they're this bad at the game, you still have to deal with the secondaries. Yeah, not very likely you're going to make it out alive if you play destroyers in this game mode, as I very painfully experienced on my stream over and over and over and over again. Anyways, enough about my inability to play the game, let's get on to cruiser players, shall we? So, moving away from shaming myself, let's move on to shaming some random World of Warships players. So where to start with cruiser players in Brawls? You know, the one strength of cruisers and randoms is the fact that there's about 23 other ships, all distracting from the fact that a particular cruiser is in the game. But once you enter into the world of 1v1 Brawls, things kind of flip, and as a result, cruiser players tend to have a very hard time in 1v1s, especially when they go up against battleships. Now, that's not to say that there aren't exceptions to this rule. If you take a Petropavlovsk or maybe even a Hindenburg into a 1v1, you might do pretty well. Heavy cruisers might actually stand a chance of beating a battleship, especially if they have torps ready to go, but generally it's just not going to work, and the people that bring cruisers into a 1v1 brawl are going to find themselves back at the dock screen and picking a battleship for their next game. A little note here though, the triangle of beatability, as I like to call it, still applies here, in the sense that battleships do tend to beat cruisers, but at the same time cruisers do tend to beat DDs, so all is not completely lost if you do take a cruiser into a 1v1 brawl. Just hope you get matched up against a DD and not a battleship, because then the whole dockyard things that I just mentioned will definitely happen. Yeah, you get the point. Moving along to battleship players. So after everything I just said, you're probably thinking, well, DDs are bad in 1v1s and cruisers aren't great, so that must mean that battleships are the best class to take into 1v1s. And well, the answer is probably yes, but that's not the full story. At least I think it's not, but I'm not great at storytelling, so this might go horribly wrong. So battleships in straight up 1v1s, how do they fare? Well, if you're going to take something like the Tirpitz or the Massachusetts into a 1v1, you're probably going to have a pretty nice time when you come up against basically any other ship, be it a DD or even a cruiser. And trust me, speaking from experience, getting detonated by a Massachusetts secondaries just as you launch 15 single file torps is more than enough to make you question your life choices, never mind your choice of a ship in 1v1s. However, if you pick something like the Amagi, you might have a bit more of a difficult time actually dealing with some of the more weird ships that can get picked against it. I mean, who doesn't love 9 overpens and 8,000 damage as a result? Another aspect that I think people tend to miss a hell of a lot is the fact that the map choice plays a massive role in just how well a game is going to go. I keep getting flashbacks to that time I played versus the Turpits in my Lightning, where we basically played merry-go-round around an island for 5 minutes before I was finally able to torpedo him, and Two Brothers is just a whole other kettle of fish in this game mode. So the straight up 1v1 isn't all that you should be considering when you're thinking of playing Brawls. The map choice still does play a major role. Anyways, let's move along to some CV fun. Yeah, fun. CVs. Anyways, so with every World of Warships video, what would it be without talking about CVs and how for once, CVs are not the most broken ship class in this game mode. You know that feeling you get once something just doesn't feel normal? Well, that's the feeling you get when you go up against a CV in Brawls. Now, this might not apply if you take a DD into a Brawl, but for any other class it's 100% true. There's 2 scenarios that generally happens when you meet a CV in a 1v1 Brawl. One might be that you basically cap both objectives and then run down the timer while the CV player does what they do best and sit about 20 kilometers away, trying to spam you to death with torpedoes. If you play a battleship, this won't really be a real problem, and you can probably even AFK and go do something else while you wait for the game to end, because I highly doubt the CV player will do anything. The other possibility is that the CV player decides they want to stop you from capping by actually entering the cap and trying to stop you. That's a good one. And well, if this happens and you're playing something like the Bismarck, or any battleship with any decent secondaries, again, you can just AFK and go do something else. Or if you feel like you need to be in the game, you can always just use your guns and send them into the middle of the next week. So, CVs are pretty much worthless from my experience in this game mode, and if only that were true in other game modes, then this game would be a lot more fun to play. Although, again, DDs and CVs tend not to mix well in this game mode, so take that into consideration too. So that pretty much sums it up for another video. I've been having a decent amount of fun with this game mode, and it really is a good addition to the game. There's something about not having teammates to get angry at or rage at that makes a game much more enjoyable, shall we say. Anyways, I digress. Until next time, I'll see you all in the next one.